The human outpost on the edge of the Andor system was not a place where anyone expected royalty to arrive. It was a practical place, built of steel and stone, meant to watch the border and protect trade routes. The soldiers who lived there were used to long days of waiting, short bursts of drills, and the occasional skirmish with smugglers. No one spoke about queens or empires, but on this day, everything changed. The alien queen had announced a rare visit. She was the ruler of the Celerin Dominion, an empire spread across dozens of star systems known for its wealth, strength, and pride. Many had seen her only in official broadcasts, tall, commanding, dressed in robes of silver and deep blue, her expression calm but sharp like a blade. She was a figure of mystery to humans, distant and untouchable, someone who stood far above the affairs of ordinary soldiers. Yet now she was coming here, to this quiet human station. The commander ordered every soldier to line up and present themselves. The air smelled of polish and oil, as boots shone, and weapons were checked again and again. Among the rows of guards stood one young soldier, Eric Hale. He was not the strongest among them, nor the most decorated. He was simply a guard assigned to stand still and silent while important people passed by. His helmet was tucked under his arm, and his eyes watched the docking bay where the Queen's ship was about to land. The air shuddered when the Celerin cruiser descended. Its hull glowed faintly, smooth and elegant like a living creature, unlike the blocky human ships. The ramp lowered, and armored attendants stepped out first, scanning the area. Then she appeared. The alien queen walked with slow, graceful steps. Her gown flowed like liquid silver, and her crown shimmered under the station lights. She did not need guards to announce her. Her presence alone made the soldiers straighten their backs. Her eyes swept over the human ranks, golden and sharp, like twin suns hidden behind calm clouds. None dared to move. None dared to speak until she stopped. Her gaze froze on one soldier, on Eric. Her breath caught, though no one heard it. Her hand twitched slightly, though she quickly stilled it. In that moment, 1,000 memories slammed into her mind. His face, his posture, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes held steady under her stare. It was the same. It was the same as him, the man she had once loved, the man she had once trusted with her heart and her throne, the man she had lost. The Queen forced herself to move again, her steps steady, her voice smooth as she greeted the human commander. None would know what storm raged inside her. She had trained her whole life to master her emotions, to never reveal weakness before enemies or allies. But even she could not deny the shock. The young human guard looked almost exactly like her former husband. Eric did not know why the Queen's eyes lingered on him. He thought perhaps he had done something wrong. Perhaps his uniform was out of order or his stance not sharp enough. He kept still, his heart beating faster as the Queen's gaze pressed down on him like a weight. When she finally looked away, he let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The reception continued. Speeches were given, hands were shaken, and promises of alliance were spoken in formal words. The Queen answered with calm dignity, her tone neither warm nor cold, simply perfect. The humans nodded and applauded, unaware of her distracted thoughts. For while her lips spoke the practiced phrases of diplomacy, her mind returned again and again to that human guard's face. It was impossible, it had to be coincidence, yet her heart whispered otherwise. That evening, as the Queen walked through the outpost with her attendants, she ordered that the human guards remain posted nearby. She said it was for safety, but in truth, she wanted to see him again. She wanted to test her memory. She wanted to know if her eyes had deceived her. And so, when she passed the corridor where Eric stood watch, she let her gaze fall on him once more. Yes, it was not her imagination. The resemblance was real. Her ex-husband's image rose in her mind. Long ago, when she had still been young and hopeful, she had believed in love. He had been strong, brave, and full of promises. They had shared dreams of uniting their people, of building peace across the stars. But dreams had shattered into betrayal, and betrayal had turned into war. He had fallen, and with him, her trust and love. Since then, she had ruled alone, her heart locked behind walls of steel. Yet now here was this human, unknowingly carrying the same face, stirring wounds she thought had long healed. She told herself it meant nothing. A face was only a face. But when she saw him shift slightly, his hand brushing the hilt of his weapon, with casual readiness, she saw not just resemblance but spirit. He carried himself with the same quiet vigilance, the same sense of duty, and that frightened her more than anything. Eric, for his part, could not understand the Queen's strange attention. He felt her eyes more than once, and though she spoke not a word to him, he sensed something unspoken hanging in the air. His fellow guards teased him lightly when she passed, saying he must have caught her notice somehow. He laughed it off, but inside he felt uneasy. He was no one special. Why would a queen notice him at all? The next day, during a private inspection of the outpost, the queen asked to observe the guards more closely. The commander, surprised but eager to please, agreed. One by one, soldiers demonstrated drills and routines. When it was Eric's turn, he stepped forward, sword at his side, rifle across his back. His movements were clean, practiced, but not extraordinary. Yet when he lifted his head, the queen's eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching his soul. He bowed stiffly when it ended, and her voice, calm but quiet, said, "Well done." It was the only praise she gave that day. Her attendants noticed her distraction. One of them, a trusted advisor, leaned close and asked softly in their own tongue if something troubled her. The queen only shook her head, unwilling to explain. How could she? To admit that a human guard reminded her of the man who had once shared her bed and betrayed her heart would be to reveal weakness. She could not allow that. But alone in her chamber that night, she let herself remember. She remembered laughter, whispered vows, the warmth of a hand in hers. She remembered betrayal, cold silence, and the pain of loss. And now, she remembered a human guard's steady gaze, so much like his. She clenched her fists. She told herself she would not be ruled by ghosts. And yet she could not stop thinking of him. Days passed, and the queen's visit continued. Every time she walked the corridors, every time she stood in the command hall, her eyes found him. And every time she told herself she would ignore it. But curiosity grew like a seed, taking root in the cracks of her armor. Who was this human? What kind of man was he? Was he anything like the one she had lost, or was it only her heart playing cruel tricks? Eric noticed the weight of her gaze more and more. He wondered if he should ask, but dared not speak. She was a queen, and he was a guard. There was no bridge between them. And yet when her eyes met his, he felt a strange pull, as if something unspoken passed between them. He did not understand it, but he knew this. His life, once simple, was no longer the same. The queen did not sleep well. Her chamber on the human outpost was quiet, shielded with guards and humming with the low sound of machines. Yet her mind refused to rest. The face of the human soldier returned again and again, pulling her back into memories she wished to bury. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring into the darkness, her golden eyes hard and restless. She told herself it was nothing. A face could not bring back the past. And yet each time she closed her eyes, she saw her husband as he once had been, young and full of promises. She saw him smiling at her during a coronation, standing at her side as the stars celebrated their union. She heard his voice whispering words of loyalty and love. Then she saw him turn away, saw the coldness in his eyes, saw the betrayal. She had locked those memories deep inside, but now they clawed their way back to the surface. And the human soldier was the reason. Morning came. She dressed in her regal robes, silver threads glinting as she placed the crown upon her head. No trace of her unrest showed on her face. A queen could never show weakness, not before her people, not before allies, not even before herself. When she walked into the command hall that day, the humans bowed slightly while her own Solaren attendants knelt low. She carried herself with calm dignity, but inside, her thoughts wandered to the guard once again. She saw him standing near the Wall, watchful, silent as he had been before. The resemblance was still there. The same strong jaw, the same firm gaze, the same way he held his stance as if ready to face danger at any moment. Why did fate place such a face before her? Was this a test of her heart? Or a cruel reminder that even across stars and species, she could not escape her past? She clenched her hand briefly, then released it. The day's work was routine: discussions of supply routes, agreements on border patrols, speeches about cooperation between their peoples. The Queen spoke with sharp intelligence, her words carefully chosen, her authority clear. Yet each time she paused, each time she turned her head, she caught sight of the guard. And each time, her heart whispered memories she did not want to hear. Later, as the meeting ended, the Queen requested a private inspection of the station's defenses. It was not unusual. She was known for her careful attention to military strength. But in truth, she wanted something else. She wanted to observe him again, not in silence, but in action. She wanted to know if it was only his face that reminded her, or if there was something deeper. The commander agreed at once and called for the guards to demonstrate their drills. The soldiers lined up in the training hall, rifles in hand, blades at their belts. The Queen sat upon a raised seat, attendants at her side watching with sharp eyes. The drills began. Soldiers moved with precision, their boots striking the floor in rhythm, their weapons rising and falling with trained ease. The Queen's face remained calm, but she hardly saw them. She waited. She watched. Then Eric stepped forward. The young human held his rifle, moving through the drill with focus. His strikes were measured, his aim sharp, his stance steady. He was not the most impressive soldier. Others were faster, others stronger, but there was something in his movement, something steady and loyal, that struck the Queen like a forgotten chord. She leaned forward slightly, her golden eyes narrowing. He turned, aimed, and lowered his weapon with practiced discipline. For a moment his eyes lifted, meeting hers across the hall. And in that instant, the years fell away, and she saw her husband again. She heard his voice, remembered his promise. "I will protect you until my last breath." The Queen's lips pressed into a thin line. She forced herself back into the present. When the drill ended, she gave a single nod. "Well done," she said, her voice calm but lower than usual. The commander smiled, proud of his men. But the guard himself, Eric, felt unsettled. He had felt her gaze, heavy and searching, as if she looked not at him but through him. And though she spoke only 2 words, he felt a strange weight in them, as if they meant more than simple praise. When the soldiers left the hall, Eric stayed quiet. He wondered why she kept watching him. He wondered if he had somehow offended her, or if he was simply imagining things. His fellow guards teased him quietly, saying perhaps he had caught the Queen's favor. Eric only shook his head, but inside he felt uneasy. He was not important, not a hero, just another soldier doing his duty. Why would a queen care? That evening, the Queen returned to her chamber. She dismissed her attendants and sat alone by the wide window, watching stars drift across the blackness. The silence was heavy. She thought of her husband again, of the day she had first met him, of how her heart had opened to him without fear. She had believed then that love could build empires. She had been wrong. And yet when she looked into the human guard's eyes, she felt the warmth of those days return. Like fire in ashes, it angered her. It frightened her. She whispered to herself, "You are nothing but a shadow. And yet, why, do you haunt me?" The next day she gave orders that surprised even her attendants. She requested that the human guard accompany her group on a short tour of the outer defenses. The commander hesitated, unsure why a queen would notice a single soldier, but her word was law. Eric received the order with confusion, but obeyed without question. They walked the steel corridors together, her attendants and human officers around. Them and Eric a step behind her, his hand resting on his weapon. The Queen asked questions about the defense systems, the placement of cannons, the patrol schedules. Her voice was sharp, commanding, yet at times her gaze flicked back to him. At one point, as they reached a high balcony overlooking the vast docking bay, she turned to him directly. Tell me, soldier, she said, her voice soft but clear. How long have you served here? Eric straightened. 3 years, Your Majesty. And before that? I trained on Mars Station, then served on patrol ships. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You are young. Yes, Your Majesty, he answered, unsure what else to say. For a long moment she studied him. Her heart beat faster for the way he spoke, the steady way he met her gaze. It was too familiar. She turned away quickly, hiding the storm inside. Eric did not understand, but he felt the weight of her silence. He wanted to ask why she looked at him that way, but of course he could not. She was a queen. He was a guard. The distance between them was wider than the stars. That night, the queen's advisor approached her in private. Majesty, the advisor said softly, forgive me, but I have noticed your distraction. Is something troubling you? The queen's golden eyes turned cold. Nothing, she said firmly. But when the advisor left, she whispered to herself, everything. She could not escape it. Each day she saw the human soldier, and each day the memories grew stronger. She remembered laughter that once filled her palace, promises whispered in the dark, hope that had burned like a star. She remembered the betrayal that had crushed it all. And now, against her will, she began to wonder if this human might somehow be her chance to feel again, or her doom to suffer once more. The Queen's visit to the human outpost was meant to be simple. She was there to review defenses, strengthen the alliance, and then leave. But nothing about it felt simple anymore. Each passing day, her thoughts tangled deeper around the human guard, the one who carried the same face as her long-lost husband. She told herself she would master these feelings, that she was stronger than memories. Yet her eyes kept searching for him, and her heart kept remembering. Her attendants noticed her distraction, but none dared question it. Only her closest advisor had tried, and the Queen had given no answer. The truth was something she could not share. Not yet, perhaps not ever. But while she struggled with her heart, danger stirred in the shadows. Not all among her people supported her rule. Even within the Solaran Dominion, there were factions that wished to see her fall. Some whispered she had grown too soft, too open to dealings with humans. Others resented her power, wanting the throne for themselves. And some hated her personally, never forgiving her choices in the past. Enemies could be found in many corners, and one such enemy had followed her here, to the human outpost. The first sign came quietly. Late one night, one of her Solaran guards was found unconscious in a corridor, his weapon missing. The commander of the outpost insisted it was a simple matter of exhaustion, but the Queen's instincts told her otherwise. She had ruled too long not to recognize danger. Something was wrong. The next day, as she walked with her attendants through the docking bay, she felt eyes on her. Not the steady gaze of the human guard she had grown used to, but something sharper, colder, filled with intent. Her steps slowed and her golden eyes flicked across the shadows. She said nothing, but she felt it, the faint hum of danger in the air. Eric, walking a short distance behind her, noticed the change. He saw how her shoulders stiffened, how her head tilted slightly, scanning the corners. He had learned in training that a leader's instincts were often sharper than a soldier's. He followed her gaze, his hand tightening on his weapon. The moment came suddenly, a flash of metal in the high rafters, a glint of light, and then the sound of something slicing through the air. Eric's body moved before his mind caught up. He leapt forward, his arms wrapping around the Queen's shoulders, pulling her down. A blade hissed past, embedding itself into the wall behind them with deadly force. Shouts filled the docking bay. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised, eyes searching. The Queen lay still for a heartbeat, the shock of the moment sinking in. She had been inches from death. Slowly she turned her head and saw the human guard above her, his arms shielding her with fierce determination. His face was close, his eyes burning with the same fire she remembered from long ago. For a moment the world blurred and she could not tell if she looked at Eric or at the man she had once loved. He spoke, his voice low but firm. Not while I still stand. The words struck her like lightning. They were the same words her husband had spoken once long ago, when assassins had attacked their palace. She had never told anyone those words, never spoken them aloud since. And now here they were again, on the lips of a human soldier who should have no reason to know them. Her heart froze, then pounded. She could not speak. She could only stare. Eric rose quickly, pulling her to her feet, keeping himself between her and the unseen attacker. More weapons clattered from above, but this time the guards spotted movement. Shots rang out, beams of light flashing through the rafters as Celerin guards and human soldiers fired upward. A shadow leapt from the beams, trying to escape. Eric drew his sidearm, fired once, and the figure dropped with a cry, landing hard on the steel floor. The assassin was dragged forward, restrained, and revealed. A Celerin mercenary, his armor, marked with the sigil of a rival noble house. The queen's eyes narrowed as she recognized the symbol. She had suspected such treachery might reach her, but she had not thought it would strike here among human allies. She stood tall once more, her silver robes flowing, her crown catching the harsh lights. Her voice was calm but edged with iron. "So it begins," she whispered. Then louder to all around her. "Double the watch. No one enters without my order. And see this traitor secured." Her attendants obeyed at once while human officers hurried to reinforce every checkpoint. But the queen's gaze did not leave Eric. She had felt his arms around her, had heard his words, had seen the fierce light in his eyes. Her chest tightened, in a way she had not allowed for years. Later, in the quiet of her chamber, she called for him. Her attendants were shocked. Why summon a mere human guard? But she insisted, and so Eric found himself standing inside her chamber, nervous but steady. He bowed stiffly. "Your Majesty." She studied him in silence for a long moment, her golden eyes unblinking. He did not shift under her gaze, though he felt as if she searched his soul. At last, she spoke. "You saved my life today." "I only did my duty, Majesty," he said quickly. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "Duty," she repeated softly. "Yes, that is what he said as well." Eric frowned, confused, but he did not dare ask. The queen rose from her seat and walked toward the wide window, her back to him. Her voice was quieter now, touched with something he could not name. "There was a time when I trusted someone as I trusted no one else. He swore to stand by me, to protect me always. But he betrayed me. He left me with scars I thought would never fade." She turned then, her gaze piercing. "And now you stand before me wearing his face, speaking his words. Tell me, soldier, who are you?" Eric swallowed. "I am no one, Majesty. I am just a guard. I don't know why I look like him or why my words reminded you of him, but I will say this. I don't break promises. If I stand in front of you, it's because I will not let harm touch you. Not while I live." The queen's heart trembled. His words were simple, but they carried weight, spoken with the kind of honesty she had long thought lost in the galaxy. She wanted to believe him, though a voice inside warned her not to. Trust was dangerous. Trust could destroy. Yet as she looked at him, she felt the old walls inside her shift, if only slightly. "You may go," she said at last, her voice regaining its calm tone. "But know this, I am watching you." Eric bowed again, then left. The queen remained by the window long after, her thoughts swirling. She had faced assassins, betrayal, and countless enemies. Yet it was a human soldier's simple vow that unsettled her most of all. She told herself it was foolish to care, foolish to let her heart stir again. And yet, when she closed her eyes, she heard his words once more. "Not while I still stand." For the first time in years, she wondered if her fate might yet change. The queen sat in her private chamber, the glow of the distant stars reflected in her golden eyes. Her attendants had left hours ago, but she remained thinking. Danger had come closer than she had expected, and while she had survived, the attack shook her more than she would admit. The human guard, Eric, had acted without hesitation. He had shielded her with courage and precision. Her mind refused to let go of the memory. The chamber door opened quietly, and her closest advisor stepped in. "Majesty," the advisor said, softly, "the council has been restless. They are concerned about recent events. There are whispers questioning your judgment. They fear that the human influence is weakening you." The Queen's jaw tightened. "Influence?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. "This human guard saved my life. He acted without thinking of reward or rank. He acted because it was, right?" The advisor bowed slightly. "I do not doubt his actions. But you must understand, Majesty, others do. To see a Celerin queen influenced by a human, it is unusual." She turned away, staring out at the stars. "Unusual, yes. Dangerous, perhaps. But my duty is to my people and my survival, not to appearances. I will not allow fear to dictate my choices." Even as she said it, a quiet part of her worried. She had lived her entire life as a ruler, never allowing her heart to sway her judgment. Yet here she was, thinking about one human more than any report, any weapon or any strategy. She hated herself for it, and yet she could not stop. The next day, she ordered a full review of the station's security measures. Eric was assigned to her direct protection once again, a move that raised eyebrows among her attendants and human officers alike. He noticed their glances but did not question them. He focused on the Queen, watching her from a distance, ready to act. For her part, the Queen struggled with her feelings. She watched him, studied him, and felt the stirrings of something she thought she had buried forever. It was not the man herself. She knew that. But there was a shadow of him in Eric, a spark that reminded her of a time when she had allowed herself to trust. Over the next few days, tensions within the council rose. Messages arrived from distant worlds, warning of dissent within her empire. Political rivals whispered of weakness, of misplaced trust, and of potential rebellion. Some openly mocked the idea of allowing a human, a species she had once deemed inferior, to have such proximity to the Queen. She ignored the whispers. She could not allow them to distract her, yet she also could not ignore the caution her advisors pressed upon her. She walked the thin line between authority and vulnerability, all the while aware that Eric was always near, steady, silent, unwavering. One afternoon, she called him to a private meeting in the command hall. It was unusual for a queen to speak, with a guard in isolation. But she had made her decision. The others were dismissed, leaving only the two of them in the large, echoing room. "Soldier," she said, her voice steady, "you have acted beyond duty, yet I must ask, do you understand the position you are in?" Eric bowed. "I do, Your Majesty. I understand that I serve at your command, and that your safety is my responsibility." She studied him for a long moment, searching his eyes. "Do you know what it means to be close to me? To be near one who carries the weight of an empire?" "I do not know fully, Majesty," he said honestly. "But I know I will not falter. Not while you need protection." Her heart ached at his words. They were simple, yet they carried a depth she had not expected. She wanted to ask him more, to test him, to see if he was worthy of the trust she felt forming, but she held herself back. Politics, duty, and fear demanded restraint. The next days were tense. Reports of political maneuvers reached her daily. Advisors argued for stricter measures, for sending Eric away or limiting his access. They said a human should never influence the Queen's decisions. She listened, but her mind kept returning to him. In moments when the council debated loudly, she caught his quiet gaze from across the room. It reminded her of steadiness, of loyalty, of courage she had once known in another life. That evening, she requested a walk along the outpost's outer terrace. Eric followed at a distance, as he had been trained to do. The stars stretched above them, vast and endless, a reminder of how small individual struggles seemed against the galaxy. The Queen spoke softly, more to herself than to him. "I have ruled for decades, and yet I find myself unsettled by a human. It is Unexpected. Eric kept a respectful distance. Majesty, he said carefully, I am here to serve. Nothing more, nothing less. My concern is your safety. She turned to him then, her eyes reflecting starlight. And yet, you remind me of someone I lost. Someone who betrayed me yet once held my trust. Eric's brow furrowed. I cannot know him, Majesty. I am only me. That is the problem, she whispered, almost to herself. You are not him, and yet you make me feel the same fear, the same caution, the same hope. He did not answer. He only bowed slightly, as if to acknowledge her words without pressing further. It was enough. The following week brought news of a larger plot. Intelligence reports revealed that the same noble house responsible for the earlier assassination attempt was planning a coordinated strike, not just against her life, but against the human outpost itself. The Queen realized that her presence had become a target, and that her enemies were clever, patient, and dangerous. Eric was assigned to her side for every patrol, every inspection, every moment she spent outside the safety of her chamber. The other guards whispered among themselves, noting how the Queen seemed distracted. But she paid them no mind. She had learned long ago that power required focus, and yet, for the first time, she found herself looking at one individual more than the whole room. One night, as she stood on the terrace again, she spoke quietly. Do you ever wonder, soldier, why fate places some people in our path? Why we see echoes of the past in strangers? Eric's eyes met hers. I do not know, Majesty, but I believe some things are not by chance. Some things happen because they must. She studied him in silence. The honesty in his tone, the steady gaze, the courage in his simple words. It unsettled her more than any political plot, more than any enemy she had faced. She wanted to deny it, to focus only on duty. But her heart betrayed her. For hours they walked in silence, the stars above them like witnesses, and though neither spoke of it, a bond was forming. It was not love, not yet, but it was trust, and it was respect. It was something that the Queen had long thought impossible to feel again. As the council meeting approached the next morning, she felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. Decisions had to be made. Allies had to be reassured. The human guard was assigned to stand at her side during the meeting as a symbol of security. And though others whispered, she did not move him. She needed him near, if only for the certainty of his presence. During the meeting, when rival nobles pressed her for explanations, she felt a quiet strength. She could not show weakness, but she could also not ignore the truth she had begun to recognize. This human, simple and steadfast, had become more than a guard. He had become a presence that reminded her that trust, courage, and loyalty could exist, even in someone she never expected. The day ended with a quiet moment. She returned to her chamber, weary, but not defeated. Eric had followed her at a respectful distance, and she did not dismiss him. Instead, she allowed herself a small glance, a small acknowledgement, that perhaps not all shadows from the past were threats. Some could be guides, even if they came in the form of a human soldier standing, quietly watching over her. The tension in the outpost had reached a peak. Word had spread quietly among the council that the noble house responsible for previous assassination attempts had intensified their plans. The Queen had prepared for a confrontation, but nothing could have readied her for the truth she would soon face. It began with reports from scouts stationed on nearby asteroids. They observed unusual movements, ships moving in precise formations, signals exchanged in code. At first, the Queen thought it was a diversion, but as the reports continued, it became clear that this was no ordinary plot. The mastermind had carefully orchestrated a plan to strike at the heart of both the Celerin Empire and the human outpost. The Queen convened an emergency council in the main hall. Eric stood beside her as always, a quiet shadow of vigilance ready to act. Her attendants and human officers filled the room, the air thick with anticipation. She addressed them with authority, outlining the potential threat and the need for immediate action. The council listened, though many doubted the extent of the danger. They were unprepared to face the cunning of the enemy lurking in their midst. The queen had a suspicion. Her heart, sharpened by years of leadership, whispered that the mastermind behind all the attacks was someone close, someone with intimate knowledge of her past, someone who had known her husband. She could feel it in the way the previous assaults had been executed, calculated, precise, almost personal. And she was right. It was the rival noble Varric whose family had long sought her throne. He had orchestrated every attempt, hiding behind mercenaries, bribing rogue agents, and waiting patiently for the right moment. His motive was clear: vengeance for a past defeat, ambition to claim power, and the cruel desire to see the queen fall. The first sign of his plan coming to fruition was the sudden breach alarm. Sensors detected an intruder within the docking bay perimeter, a ship moving at an impossible speed toward the station. The queen's heart tightened. This was the culmination of months of scheming, and Eric, as always, was at her side. "Prepare for immediate defense," she commanded. "Seal all entry points. Civilian personnel must evacuate to secure areas. Guards, follow your orders precisely. And Eric," she paused, her golden eyes meeting his. "Stay close." He nodded. "Always, Majesty." The boarding alarm sounded. The intruder ship deployed smaller fighters, moving with precision toward the docking bay. Laser fire erupted in bursts, streaks of light slicing through the void as human and Celeran defenses responded. The queen remained calm, directing strategy, giving orders, and moving with authority. Yet her eyes constantly flicked to Eric, who moved with silent readiness, guarding her from any unexpected attack. Then the true danger appeared. Varric himself had boarded the station, disguised as a human engineer to evade sensors. He carried a device capable of disabling the station's defenses, giving his forces a clear path. He moved through the halls, unseen, until he reached the main command room where the queen had stationed herself. The queen sensed his presence before she saw him. Her hand hovered near her concealed weapon. She turned slightly and caught sight of his shadow slipping along the wall. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her golden eyes narrowing. "Eric," she said quietly. "He is here." Without hesitation, Eric moved forward, positioning himself between the queen and the shadow. "I see him, Majesty. I will stop him." Varric stepped into the light, removing his disguise, his face twisted in anger and ambition. "You should have died months ago," he spat. "Your reign ends today." The queen's eyes flared. "You overestimate yourself," she said, her voice sharp as steel, "and underestimate the loyalty of those who serve me." Eric stepped closer, drawing his weapon. The tension was thick, the room electric with impending conflict. Varric lunged, aiming a strike at the queen. Instantly, Eric moved, blocking the attack, their weapons clashing with a spark. The queen drew her own blade, moving with precision honed over decades of leadership and battle training. The fight was swift and intense. Varric was skilled, but he was alone against both the queen and the human guard. Eric's movements were fluid, precise, and unwavering. Each time Varric aimed a blow at the queen, Eric intercepted. Each time Varric attempted to escape, the queen anticipated his movements, cutting off routes and controlling the space. In a tense moment, Varric tried to detonate the device that would have disabled the station's defenses. Eric lunged, grabbing the device and throwing it away, rendering it useless. Sparks flew, and the intruder realized his plan was failing. He stumbled back, surprised by the coordination between the queen and the guard. The queen pressed forward, her blade pointed at Varric's chest. "It ends now," she said, her voice echoing with authority. "Surrender or fall." Varric hesitated, seeing the determination in her eyes and the steadfast loyalty in Eric's stance. He realized he was beaten. Slowly, he dropped his weapons and raised his hands. The queen signaled the guards, who quickly restrained him, securing the traitor without further violence. The room fell silent. The queen exhaled slowly, her body tense but steady. She looked at Eric, who stood a few steps behind her, still alert, yet allowing himself a moment of relief. He had saved her again, had proven loyalty beyond words, and she had seen him as more than just a guard. "Your skill and courage," she said softly, her golden eyes meeting his, "have saved not only my life, but the lives of everyone in this station. I will not forget it." Eric bowed, his expression calm but respectful. "I serve to protect you, Majesty. Always." The Queen studied him in silence. There was no ex-husband here. There was only a human soldier who had shown bravery, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. Someone who had reminded her that humanity could rise above expectations, that courage was not bound to species or rank. She allowed herself to take a step closer the first time she had moved beyond formal distance in months. "You are not him," she said quietly. "But perhaps you are someone I can trust, someone I can rely on." Eric's brow furrowed slightly. "Majesty." She held up her hand. "Do not speak, just stand by me." For the first time in her reign, she allowed herself to feel relief, not just as a queen, but as a being who had long forgotten trust and loyalty. Eric remained at her side, steadfast and silent, a living reminder that strength could be found in unexpected places. In the days that followed, the Queen addressed her council. She made changes to ensure the station's security, but she also declared that humanity was no longer to be seen as inferior. The bravery of one soldier had proven that alliance and respect were earned through action, courage, and honor. Her people listened, some reluctantly, but all recognized the wisdom in her words. Eric continued to serve at her side, no longer just a guard but a symbol of trust in the bond that had formed during crisis. The Queen, though cautious, began to see him differently, not as a replacement for the man she had lost, but as someone worthy of respect and loyalty in his own right. The final night of her visit, the Queen stood on the terrace overlooking the stars. Eric was there, as always, at a respectful distance, but close enough that she could sense his presence. "You have shown me courage," she said softly, "and reminded me that loyalty and bravery exist in ways I thought lost. For that, I am grateful." Eric bowed slightly. "It is my honor to serve you, Majesty. I do not seek reward, only to ensure your safety." She smiled faintly, the first true smile in years. "Perhaps that is reward enough." The stars stretched endlessly above them, vast and silent. The galaxy remained full of dangers, full of politics, full of uncertainty. But in that moment, the Queen felt a sense of calm she had not known in decades. Not because the threat was gone, it was never truly gone, but because she had found someone she could trust, someone who had proven that even in the vastness of space, loyalty, courage, and humanity could shine brighter than any weapon, any plot, any betrayal. And as she stood there, side by side with Eric, she realized that while the past had shaped her, it did not define her future. The galaxy was wide, full of challenges, but she was ready to face it, with a new ally, a new trust, and a heart that could once again feel, without fear, without hesitation. In the end, the Queen understood something she had long forgotten. True strength came not from power alone, but from the courage to trust, the wisdom to forgive, and the willingness to stand beside those who prove their honor, no matter their origin. And Eric, the human soldier who looked like someone she had lost, had shown her all of that and more. The Queen's gaze lifted to the stars, and for the first time in years, she smiled fully, without restraint. Her empire, her people, and the universe beyond seemed just a little brighter, because of one human who reminded her that even in a galaxy of endless dangers, humanity, its courage, loyalty, and spirit, was a force worth trusting.